Hi everyone, welcome Phil again onto the Teacher's Point of View podcast. I'm so pleased, obviously, you've come back on. I mean, you were a bit of a fan favourite last time, and I really enjoyed speaking to you. So I wanted to get you on for season two, and obviously speak to you about kind of where education is and why it needs to evolve. For anyone that kind of didn't watch the last episode or doesn't know who Phil is, he's had so many years of experience in the education system. He's was a head teacher from like 2012, was it from my memory, and basically he's obviously taken over failing schools and taken them on journeys and got them to good rated within like 18 months from what I remember. And he's he's been on an incredible journey. He's recently semi-retired and is on this journey of trying to evolve education himself and kind of looking at where education is in the UK and why it really needs to change. So I had to get you back on, Phil, really. I mean, like obviously education is a wonderful thing, isn't it? I mean, it's not that we're kind of slating off education. Education is so wonderful and teachers are doing an incredible job and you make an impact in children's lives every day. But looking at kind of what countries do across the world, there is no reason why we can't collaborate. I mean, the world is quite small now, and why can't we learn from other people and take nuggets from what other people are doing and make our system better and make education more accessible for everyone, right? And I think obviously the system there in the UK is obviously quite dated. I mean, we still teach the way that we did sort of about 30 to 50 years ago. I mean, where do you think like kind of education is now, and why do you think it kind of needs to change?
It's a 19th century system using 20th century technology in 21st century buildings. It's not going to work, is it? We need, absolutely. What do we want for our children? Where do we want them to go? What do we want them to do? How do we want them to evolve and become better citizens of the planet? Yeah, my generation have left them a planet that is going to that has created climate change, unbelievable capitalism, wealth for the very, very few, and everybody else is muddling along behind. And so that's my generation. Thank you very much. Yeah, haven't we done a really good job? The next generations coming through need to be better. They need to be better in all aspects. And the way that we are educating our children is exactly the same way as I went through school back in the 1970s and 80s. It's not much different. I remember my head teacher in year 3 coming in and testing me on my times tables. Now we've got a national test for times tables in year 4. It hasn't moved on. And I understand why. Control is everything when you're up at the top, and that's very important. It's become the overriding important thing. So you if you come down with a top-down level of management, then you have to retain control and autonomy and not let anybody think, breathe, or work together. They'll give you the nuggets that they want you to do that, but then they'll roll you back in, when sees fit. And I think a good example was Greenwich, wasn't it? Just before we broke up for Christmas, when Greenwich, the CEO of Greenwich LA or whatever, said that's it, shut them down for a week, and he was threatened with legal action straight away. And it's just like, come on, we're doing our best here. We are trying to do our best, but this where we are at this moment in time, I feel for them. I really do, because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm tired of it being so reactionary. To put announcements out one day before you break up for Christmas to head teachers and say, oh, by the way, by the time you come back in a fortnight, you're going to be a full testing centre and you're going to have everybody trained and you've got to know what you're doing and everything like that. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Why are we so reactionary? Why can't we be proactive for this? Why can't we turn around and somebody says, we are shutting you for 6 weeks. Everybody stays home. Anyway, you could go on and on and on about it, couldn't you? But these are extraordinary times, and it is you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm tired of the reactionary rather than the proactive, which is what good people do to get on top of things. And if you look at countries that have been successful, like Finland, Estonia, Canada, in their education systems, in producing children who are creative, innovative thinkers who will challenge the norms and do well from an academic point of view, but also from an interpersonal point of view, who have those, soft skills is a terrible phrase. I think soft skills it's wrong. These are the core skills that we're going to need now. Kids need one of the things that I've noticed with my kids and with my foster kids is you put a problem in front of them and they ain't got a clue. They haven't got a clue how to overcome it. And they need their hand holding through the whole process to sort them out. Now, not all, but the majority do. And that those skills of resilience, grit, determination, those intercommunication skills, those, being able to present, those being able, those things that give you confidence to be able to deliver, working as part of a team, where are they? And those are going to be absolutely crucial for their future. We were talking a little bit before. I think it's like handwriting. We insist on cursive handwriting and all that sort of thing. What the hell has that got to do with anything in the world today? They should be taught how to touch type because everybody uses computers. It's as simple as that. And yeah, you need to know how to write, of course you do. But to put such a focus on the written word when actually give them all a laptop and teach them how to touch type, that's going to be so much more valid and useful to them in the future. And we need to have the courage to be able to step aside from the prescription of the DFE and be brave and say, no, that's not right for my kids. The great schools out there, look at the national curriculum, which on a personal level is the biggest problem that we have. The biggest problem that we have in education is the national curriculum, because at 205 pages long at primary, it's so ridiculously prescriptive. No wonder they've got no time to do anything else. And everybody's just a product on a production line. So I feel for everybody in that. It's the same up in secondary. It's such a prescriptive national curriculum that the freedom to express and create and think and do isn't there, because it's all geared to that exam result and everything's held to account on that. So we need to start from the top down, start to trust people, so that we're getting kids who are going to be fit for the future.
I mean, like it's difficult though, because we've been in this system for such a long time, haven't we? I mean, I think naturally people dislike change anyway, don't they? I mean, we spoke in the last podcast you came on when you took over a failing school, and sometimes the difficulties that you have with staff that don't like the changes that you naturally make. I mean, to do that on a national scale is a big ask for anyone, isn't it? I mean, naturally you're going to have people that oppose it, but more than ever, I think it's so important what you're saying, because the world has evolved so much in the 21st century. I mean, the FTSE 5 research was done, the FTSE 500 companies, they talked about when graduates come out of university and they go to the jobs, they have to completely retrain them, because they don't come out with the real life skills that are needed to do the job. They don't challenge opinions. They're not innovative. They're like the presentation skills, the confidence skills. I mean, they're just not there, are they? And that begs the question: why are we not preparing students better for the real world? I mean, yes, some people academically, they'll do all right and they'll go on to become doctors and solicitors or whatever. That's fine. But I mean, but the world has changed. I mean, there's so many different industries out there now. I mean, I wouldn't look at somebody's grades necessarily for a recruitment job. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, yeah, it's crazy. The world has changed.
Yeah. And I think what people know and recognize and understand is, look, education is not going to change overnight in this country. It's going to take a generation to change it, without a doubt. It's going to take 10 to 15 years to change it. But we have to look at it now and see where are we going, and where do we want to be in 15, 20 years. And it starts with small things. It starts with developing a culture of education across the country where teachers are trusted. The educational professionals are trusted, right? Not the DFE with its diktats coming out every flaming 6 months to say, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, right? And then changing their mind every few weeks. It's just not acceptable. I looked at a little post, and I put a post out there not long ago about Secretaries of State for Education, about how long they'd been in their job. And I went all the way back to Estelle Morris, which was over 20 years ago. And she is the last education secretary who has any kind of educational background, right? And there were about 10 or 12, there were about, in 20 years, there's been something like about 14, 15 education secretaries. So, and their average lifespan is about 1 year and 7 months. Now, if I change the head teacher of a school every 1 year and 7 months, I'm telling you here and now, a school would be in a desperate state.
Yeah.
Desperate state. The leaders are important. They're crucially important. If I'm having a bad day as a head teacher, it affects everyone, right? So we've got a DFE that changes its boss every couple of years, right? And so no wonder there is chaos and change and everything coming out of it. Mr. Williamson, I'm afraid to say, will be gone in the next reshuffle. But that reshuffle will happen when it's more convenient for Boris, right? But he will be gone, and so we need to plant the seeds of from the top to say, actually, we need to work with you rather than on you, to say this is how we're going to move forward, and we need to have a full sort of review of education and say, look, where are we going? How can we make it work? And work with the unions and the Chartered College and our other representatives to say, look, this is where we want to take it in the future. But the high stakes accountability that's based all on testing and exams, as they have proliferated this year, has got to go. It's got to change. It's not all about that, because for those kids who do get their GCSEs, so many kids would have got GCSEs but were switched off from it when they came through the system. I had friends in school who were not successful, didn't get their O levels, back in the day, but they've got master's degrees, they're doctors and everything else because they've taught themselves as the years have rolled on. I was lucky, school fit me, so I was all right. I could retain knowledge and I could pass tests easy. My brother he's a joiner, has been his whole life. Walked out at 16, burnt his books with his O level in woodwork and said, I'm never going back, ever. But he's had a successful career. Now, my brother can build a house with his eyes shut. I can't hang a picture. We all have our own skills. I'm old now. I've got more than half a century on this planet. And when I talk about, those jobs and those trades, plumbers, electricians, sparkies, actually, that's quite an old-fashioned way of looking at it. Where's the YouTuber? Where's the game designer? Where's where are the IT skills that we're generating and interest? Because I can guarantee that most of your kids in your class will go home and know more about how to use an Xbox and all the technology better than I will. And so how are we encouraging them to develop those skills? I read in the paper last week that the highest earner on YouTube earned something like 9.7 million quid last year, or $9.7 million, whatever it was. It was a 9-year-old little boy. That was the biggest earner on YouTube last year. Now, obviously, he got a very savvy dad or mom, right? But he was just a 9-year-old boy on YouTube, and he made more money than anybody else. So education is dead. The way that we look at it, knowledge-based, what a load of rubbish. I can pick that up and I can find out anything within 10 seconds, right? So a knowledge-based curriculum, knowledge-rich curriculum that they're always harping on about, knowledge-rich curriculums are dead. I want a 17-year-old to come in and do a presentation that impresses the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I want teachers that are going to stand in front of a class of 30 small children and make them laugh and smile and inspire them and make them, for me, it was always about using my personality and my way of doing things to inspire my class. I always said as a head teacher to even the cleaners and the TAs, those people who are lower in the pecking order, if you want to come, I say, how do you inspire? How do you inspire the kids? Because it's not about one person, it's about everybody inspiring kids. And we're not producing that. I've had 3 NQTs in my career that have inspired me. 3. And I've come across a lot. The rest of them are just box ticking robots who need their hand holding to bring them through the process. 3 of them have inspired me to think you are going to make a difference. You are going to be, everybody comes into teaching to make a difference. You make a difference by being the same as everybody else, do you? That's not making a difference. That's just doing what everybody else does. Right? That's not being different. That's not, to make a difference, you've got to be different. It's just bonkers. But it's very hard when a system says you're held to account that way. Yeah, and we will, and we will thrash you if you don't. And it's just, so we need to build trust. We need to build trust in the profession right from the top. They need to let go and start saying, okay, it's not going well, right? And they can do it behind closed doors for all I care, but as long as they start to listen to our representatives who start to put a view forward that can alter things over the course of a generation, and then the world will be a better place. And we better hurry up, because the planet's going to burn if we don't, or it's going to go underwater. These are bigger issues, but it will come from this generation of kids coming through school to solve these problems, and they're going to have the courage to change things. And it's going to be hard if we don't change as a profession.
Absolutely. I mean, it all stems from education, doesn't it? And you're right, knowledge-based curriculum. I mean, you can literally go on Google and find that information when you need to, but it's the application of knowledge that is so important in the 21st century. And that is something that maybe we're not doing so much. I mean, I was speaking to a gentleman in the Middle East, and he talks about at the end of the year, they've got, so the kids, they sit on a computer, they're passed a case study or some information, and then they have to go out and find information. It's an open book test. They can get information from wherever they want, but it's about applying that knowledge and making it relatable, and that's how they assess whether their children are doing well. I mean, it's a complete different way of doing it. I mean, nobody needs to memorize information anymore. How many times are you going to be in a position where you're going to have to memorize something? I guess there is some benefits to it. I'm not saying that we need to completely rule out academic centralized exams, but there is a need to move away from it and add things in, like your softer skills that you so rightly put are essential skills nowadays, and the application of knowledge. That those things are so much more important in the 21st century. And you're absolutely right. It needs to move on. I mean, you mentioned obviously DFE, and I think the big problem is, like education here in the UK is a bit of political football, isn't it? I mean, you and I have spoken about it in the past, and whereas where you look at places like Dubai, and the reason why Dubai is starting to fly in education is because they have a Ministry of Education that is full of just educators that are a complete separate entity to the government. The government do not have control of education. I mean, education comes first, and they are literally run by educators. I think that is something that we need to move towards here in the UK.
Well, I back in March, when all this thing kicked off, and I was feeling somewhat frustrated. I started a little campaign called Change Education 2020. It was more of a me venting a lot of my frustrations, but I put a lot of things that I would sort of do in education out there, and the solutions that were associated with it. So, I said things like high stakes accountability have got to go, from the current situation. Ofsted is no longer fit for purpose in the way that it does things. Accountability is fine. We should be working together. It's public money. People should be checking that we're using it and doing the appropriate things with it. But in its current form, it's got things like league tables needed to be scrapped. SATs and all this testing that is going on, particularly at primary, it serves no purpose other than to track and for people to justify themselves. So these have got to go. The biggest thing for me, as I've mentioned to you before, TJ, is the national curriculum. I think it's ridiculous. It's so big and prescriptive. It just kills all creativity, because everybody is so fearful and stuck for time that they haven't got the time to develop, fantastic things, because they are under pressure because of the weight of the national curriculum, and it's wrong. I understand the premise of a national curriculum, but it should be a minimal document that is then handed over to teachers to say, go and deliver it. We trust you to deliver it, so that we know that every school is delivering it, and delivering it well to the individual needs of the children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kids in Cumbria and Cornwall don't need exactly the same stuff as kids in inner city Birmingham or London. They don't. They're going to need different skills to get through in their life. Yeah. Now, they need a core of key skills, and that's your national curriculum. After that, how it's delivered and what they live day in, day out throughout their education career is completely different.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be done. We need... I get very frustrated at times about as a profession, we have something like 95% union membership. Everybody's in a union. Why? Because if you get into trouble, then they'll come and help you, right? Because there's a big fear. So we have incredible union membership. But the trouble is, we have so many different unions that we can't give a cohesive and clear response to government whenever they come out with something. And so constantly, they're constantly dropping things on us. And we just have to take it. I think the union. I've advocated for a long time that the unions need to get their act together and come together as one strong union and give one clear voice back, working with the charter college to sort of go, no, you're not doing this. So if they start turning around and cracking the whip, then we stand together as a profession and say, don't you realise there's better ways of doing this? And no, the answer is no, we're not doing it. You are not dropping on people like this and dealing with situations like this and telling everybody how to do their job. When we are the experts at it, and we need to be stronger as a profession, and we've allowed ourselves to become battered on by those in power. I've always suggested, and I've always said in my campaign, that education should be apolitical. It really should. It should be like the NHS, given a 10-year funding plan, so it knows where it's going, it knows what it's doing, and it should be taken out of the political spectrum. These are our children. They're not a political tool. They're not a political pawn that they can turn around and say, standards have improved this year. If you look at every education minister, all they do is say standards, improving standards, world-class standards. Standards for what? When through Boris's own admission, it's a mutant algorithm that moves up and down every year to just make sure that standards improve by 2% at progress 8 levels and at key stage 1. Like you said, it's a nonsense. I think you needed 18% to pass the AQA GCSE maths last year. 18%. It's like it's an algorithm that moves and it punishes the poorer kids as well. It's wrong. How can you lump everybody together and just decide where the barrier is going to be? Decide the pass and fail mark for the simple reason that politically you can't have it where it was last year because it would show that standards are gone. Our kids are not political pawns, and they shouldn't be, and it should be taken away from politicians. Fine, have a department for education, right? Have an education minister if needs be. I'm not an expert on that sort of thing, but take the political interference away from it.
Yeah.
The DFE should be filled with educators, people who have been in schools. And I'm not talking about Dame Rachel Kasuda. I'm talking about people who have done the job day in, day out, who have a passion for education and know what is needed, who can come together and work for the benefit of children across the country. If you put that package there with a 10-year funding package behind it, which has gone out the window because we've just spent 9 years budgets just like that over the last 12 months, and this ain't going away. This is going to be here for another 12 months, quite frankly. But the way that if we can put a 10-year funding package together with it, like the NHS, then it might have a chance. If people stop interfering, they work out a generational change over that 10 years so that in 10 years' time, this is where we want to be, then you've got a chance. And we've got to put a lot more of well-being and mental health well-being in that as well.
Absolutely.
And move away from this behaviourist point of view where, if you do wrong, you're out. It's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. We need to be better trained, the teachers, in terms of IT, fantastic delivery to inspire children, and in the understanding of child and neurological development. Mm-hmm. Because we don't. We've stuck with this system for years and years and years. Like you get a chance, you get a second warning, and then that's it. You're out of the classroom, and it's just not good enough. We need to be better and understand our children and understand our kids better. That's why in Finland they've all done a master's. They all understand pedagogy. They understand teaching at a much deeper level than we do in our schools. The majority of teachers in secondary schools have done a PGCE 1 year. That's it. Get in there. It's not good enough. We need people who've got 5-6 years of decent study and understanding behind them. And that's why teachers in other countries like Estonia, Canada, Finland are respected, because they're trusted by the society that they're doing a really good job. And so that's what I sort of think. Sorry, going on a bit again.
No, it's true. I mean, you're absolutely right. In Finland, obviously, they do spend that much time kind of obviously studying. But here, the problem that I kind of see in the UK is we have a shortage problem. We have a shortage of teachers as it is. To then kind of get graduates to spend an extra 5 years studying to get into teaching, it might kind of repel sort of graduates to get into teaching, but it depends on how well respected they are, and if there's more money being given to them because they've actually been working harder. And I think obviously that's one of the big things in Finland. Obviously I spoke to Perjo, who's obviously in Finland, and she explained that obviously they get a lot of respect, they're well looked after, and they get the resources needed. I mean, they don't get like loads of resources in terms of technology, but they get the right resources, and it's about kind of the children, and it's very much centralized to it's very children centralized opposed to just being data. And I think that's the big problem here in the UK. It's all data, isn't it? It is very much data, and it's a complete generalization, and it doesn't look at individuality. And I think that's a massive problem here in the UK.
Yeah, and you know, we've got to ask ourselves as a profession, what do we want? Where do we want to go? Where do we want to be? You know, if parents are happy with the way things are, and you know, it's all about getting those grade 9s, then nothing's going to change. I don't think anything will ever change, you know. But parents need to understand what is being done to their children and what is being done to the teaching profession.
Yeah.
You know, my little 8-year-old lad saw the snow this morning and said, I want to write a poem. But how wonderful and lovely. And he wrote a poem, a 4-line poem, and it was very sweet and very everything. And in the same breath, he grammatically analysed it. You know, in terms of this is an expanded noun phrase, this is a personification, and this is an adverbial phrase. I thought, you're 8. You're 8. What are you talking about? You're 8. What on God's earth? And the way that he structured his poem, you could go into any primary school in the country and it would be structured in exactly the same way. And I just thought, there you go, you may as well just stick a label on his head and go, there's his robot number, off you go.
Yeah.
That we are killing the joy of writing poems. You know, look at, you know, follow the people like Michael Rosen and people like that on Twitter. You know, you'll see where their frustration is, you know, in terms of, you know, Seken was a great advocate of it, wasn't he? And, you know, and you know, the great, you know, some of the great speakers like Simon Sinek will turn around and say, find you why. Why are you there? Why are you here? You know, and if you put kids in our education system, there is no why. It's do as you're told, you're out. You cop a load of trouble, you'll be in deep trouble, and you know, you challenge the situation, challenge the norm, challenge the situation that you're in as a student, and all hell will come down on you like a ton of bricks. Nothing changes.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I think if you respect kids and you value them and you give them your time and you put the effort in to do that, then those kids are the ones that respond to you, and those kids are the ones that will, you know, be the innovators of the future. They will be the game designers. They will be the coders to develop the supercomputers, as well as the plumbers, sparkies. You know, we still need electricians. We still need plumbers. We still need, you know, those people who, you know, we still need brickies. We still need, you know, what are we doing to encourage those practical skills? You know, throughout schools, I tried to put a motorbike but when my son was in secondary school, I tried to give them a motorbike in the engineering department and said, take it to bits, rebuild it, it's yours, go for it. What a great project. You know, 6 months backwards and forwards, and no, health and safety won't let us bring it into school. It's putting the system at the center of it rather than the children. And that's where we're wrong. We need to start, as Perjo says, we need to put children at the heart of everything that we do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't. We have such a fear of the system. It is the system that rules. So we need to challenge that and look at, you're never going to make systemic change unless we can admit that there's a problem with the system. And once we admit that we've got a problem, that's the first step to solving it. And then we can go on from there. You know, I do hope, I know that there is a growing sense of frustration with the way that we are dealing with things for our children. And we need to educate those kids. You know, I know of too many teachers who, you know, why do 40% go in first 5 years? Why? Because teaching isn't the job that they thought it was going to be. They thought they were going to be able to innovate, create, have fun, enjoy. And they found that they've given it a crack for 3-4 years and found that they're just bought-in scheme deliverers. And it's not good enough for teachers, and it's not good enough for our kids.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a lot of like head teachers and stuff that are in the system, and that obviously it works for them. But obviously, like you said, there's a lot of teachers that are growing in this view, and they want to be different in the way that they can challenge their kids. And I think ultimately it's got to move in that direction anyway. But it's hard, isn't it? But when the system has been in a way for such a long time, and a teacher feels this way, like you said, you're an ex-head teacher. I mean, you can kind of like, now that you're out of the system, you can kind of voice your frustrations a little bit more. But when you're in the system, it's that much more difficult, isn't it? And so what do? You know, like, you don't want to risk losing your job, and but you want to obviously try to do the best for your kids. And yeah, obviously it's very, very frustrating. I mean, there's a lot of head teachers that will probably really enjoy working the way that the system works because they like the data input, and it might work for them, but does it work for the kids ultimately? And I think you're absolutely right about the leaderboards. So just going back to the leaderboards, and I think it's such an important point because there'll be schools at the bottom of the leaderboard in the same boroughs as schools that are quite high up in the leaderboards. What you're saying is because of location, some children will suffer it in the quality of education that you get compared to someone up the road who's just going to a better school in the area. I mean, every single school in that borough should be on the same level in terms of quality of delivery in terms of education, because every child in the UK, we're a first world country. Why are children not getting a world-class education in some schools, and some schools they are, you know? And it's something that needs to be addressed, and I think that's where Ofsted needs to come in, and that's where they need to change their part, in my opinion. I think they need to be coming in and not grading schools, but they need to be looking at them and saying, look, this is what you need to improve on, this is what the school down the road is doing, we're going to get someone in to come in and implement what you need to do to make sure that this is moving forward. And a child should be able to go to one school down the road to another school and have the exact same education as the child that is down the road.
Well, the solution that I gave when it came to Ofsted was we returned to something more like a HMI. Yes, of course, grading goes out the window because we assume that all schools are good, and rightly so. But the HMI has sort of 50 schools under their control, and they regularly visit those 50 schools in a particular area. And they will work with them and support them. So if they're struggling in maths, they can say, look, these schools in this area are really good at maths. You might want to work and collaborate with them and support them and help them out together. You know, yes, of course, if a school is really struggling, there needs to be some sort of accountability built into it where people can step in and help. But rather than academy orders coming in and then everybody turns, everything's taken over, and then everything's, you're part of an academy trust that's got 97 schools all over the country, right? You're working collaboratively and locally with local leaders and local people who understand the local situations and local concerns, so that you can support each other and work together. And that might mean shifting a lot of staff around a few schools locally to help them and to get them up to speed. Now, those that won't do it, well, you need to go. And those that can't do it, well, we need to support them and to become better at what they do. Because, as you said, if you're doing something for 10 years, it's very difficult to change and move on from it. But if Ofsted was looked at as a supportive friend, a challenging supportive friend, then and that's the only way that I ever saw them, was as a supportive, a challenging but supportive colleague. That's what you want. That's how you get better. And Ofsted is very clever in that all it does is check what you think anyway. It doesn't, and it lays out that's our game. That's what we're playing. They're very open about it. I think if you can't play that game, there's something bloody wrong with you. So you play their game at what their game is. And at the moment, it's very much, and I'm pleased to hear, it's very much, how are you delivering? It's not as hard on the data, but it's now, what are you giving the kids? How are you delivering things to your kids? And they want to know how you got to those results at the end of the day. When it comes to primary, I think that this is all the bloody nonsense anyway. They're little primary school kids. We should be teaching them to learn to read and write and basic mathematics, and have a sense of awe and wonder about the world, and love learning, and have fun coming to school and have a smile on their face. Well, that's your national curriculum for primary. It ain't that complicated, so that when they move on to secondary, then they can start to really narrow down into their subjects, or they can start to learn and figure out their things through phenomenon and whatever they're looking at. That's the sort of thing. What secondary schools are they might be talking about COVID, but how many are actually following it as a scheme of work and really investigating it and getting rid of the misinformation out there so that the kids are really educated about it and giving the kids freedom to start to explore that sort of thing. You know what? I doubt it. I doubt it.
I think the problem with that is nobody else knows what's going on either. So how are we meant to teach the kids? But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it needs to be so relevant to the world. I mean, that's how you gain interest and inspire kids. I mean, I remember hearing something Gavin McCormack said, and he was teaching his kids about volcanoes. But instead of like going through the basics of this is what a volcano is, he sort of inspired them through the story of him going to a volcano, and he took them on this journey. And by the end of it, they kind of were asking questions about the volcano and how it works, and like they're asking the right question, inspired to learn. And education has changed. You're not people that just pass on information anymore. You are now people that like kind of have to inspire kids to want to learn, because like we said earlier, they can just get that information from going on Google. I mean, it's so simple, but it's about how can we inspire them and want to get them to have passion for learning, and like how can we get them to want to do better for themselves, and like grow as people. And
yeah, it's like that 8-year-old, my little 8-year-old lad who can talk the talk when it comes to his breaking down grammatically of a poem and things like that. And I think, yeah, you'll be all right. You'll be fine in the system because you'll pass the test. You'll be okay. What about the majority of kids who find that as boring as hell? I'm often struck with the awe and wonder that our teachers can teach this rubbish, right? Just imagine what they could do if they were freed up to teach what they really wanted to teach their kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the problem. They're so tied because of this massive prescriptive national curriculum and this overwhelming, focus on, breaking stories down and grammar and everything like that when it comes to English, instead of the joy of writing a story or the joy of engaging in a story, the joy of reading a story. Reading a story, whether it's on a laptop or a book, I don't care. Reading is reading. It's what you understand from it. To test them on it at the age of 11 is a nonsense, because I can guarantee you every year 6 teacher can tell you whether they're at an acceptable standard or not. By the age 11, they'll tell you that SATs don't tell you anything that you don't already know.
Yeah.
So all this testing is a nonsense, and it needs to go. And then when you compare schools that are like for like, it's just an anomaly, and it just, it's done for a political reason, and that is to show that government's policies are, improving standards. I've said to you before that after 1985, standards leaving secondary school rose for 28 years on the trot, or something daft. I must have been thick. My generation must have been unbelievably thick if kids left more clever than we were for 28 years. Really? You're having a laugh. It's been this way forever and a day, this algorithm that has just decided that, kids are not individuals. They are a product of a thing, and it depends entirely how intelligent you are with your year band, depends on how well you are going to achieve. Because you could be in the brightest year band in the country, right? Yeah. But if you bomb a test, you could come out as one of the, you are only going to be 1.2% better than the previous year, even though actually you were a completely different cohort and you were much, much brighter.
Yeah.
It's a nonsense. And to play our children in that game is wrong. And it's abhorrent to do it. They're kids. They're not a political pawn.
And that's the thing. I mean, exactly what you said. And I think that's so important, is that, yes, I mean, we look at those years and we've got that year cohort, and some kids are brighter than other kids. Fair enough. But that doesn't show us how much brighter they are from the year before or the year after. And the year six kid that struggles with writing and understanding grammar and mathematics and things like that, but can go home and can write his own programs and game like that you wouldn't believe, and put a YouTube video together that is a quality, and use apps that are just beyond the comprehension of any teacher. Where's the value in that? That kid's tell everybody. Picasso once said, wasn't it, that every child is an artist. The problem with the education system is to keep the artist in them. Everybody has a gift for something. Everybody has a talent for something, and something that they enjoy. Yeah. We always scream out, follow your passions, follow your passions. No. I think it's about finding something that you're good at, and then working at that. And then when you work at it and you become great at it, then the passion will flow through you because of it. Mm-hmm. My 17-year-old son
when I saw him at 14 taking a motorbike engine to pieces in the garage in the middle of February, and it was freezing and he was completely lost in it. He's taking the clutch plates out and gear, and everything. And it was just like, he's found his thing and he's good at it and he enjoys it. So he's now at college studying to become a mechanic, because he's good at it. And I say, you're good at it, so get better at it until you become great at it.
Yeah.
And then when you're great at it, the passion will flow through you, and then you really get into it. You really get into it. So for the kid who can strip a motorbike engine down, the kid who can make YouTube videos like you wouldn't believe on with various media and apps, for kids who can, for kids who can go home and weld because their dad's a welder and they've been doing it since they were 6, for kids who can, for kids who can strip, cars down like I did with those kids in year 6, who are a lot more hands-on and practical. What about them? Where are they being supported and helped and developed to become great human beings when they get older? There's nothing wrong with a kid sitting at a computer all day if they're doing something productive and researching and finding stuff out and developing code and imagine your son's the new writer of JavaScript. That's probably old school nowadays, but that's where my head is. But where are these kids? The proclivity is all to primary, it's reading, writing, maths. That's it. Because it's a political tool, and it's wrong because kids are just not seen as individuals; they're just seen as a product. And we've got to be better than that. And if this pandemic has shown anything, it's that teachers are adaptable. Yeah. If this pandemic has shown anything, it's that politicians aren't. Right, and that's where the fundamental issue lies. And as a profession and as a nation, we need to say to politicians, this isn't good enough for our kids. Leave it alone. Leave education to the educational, and leave them to look after our kids. And it'll take a long time. This isn't going to happen in 5 years. It's going to take 15, 20 years. But if I'm lying on my deathbed in 25 years' time and the wheel was now moved, it is now getting moving in the right direction, I'll go to my maker and think, yeah, I made a difference. And that's important. Being a teacher, that's what made a difference.
Absolutely.
And that's what's important.
And I think these are the conversations we need to be having, and more and more now, because I think that if 2020 has taught us anything, knowledge-based curriculums aren't the only important thing. And it's so important to. You look at mental health at the moment. It's gone through the roof in the last 10 years, compared to where it was 20 years ago. Ultimately, we need to be preparing children not only just for academically, but we need to be preparing them for life, and that is through mental health and sort of self-awareness and gratitude and just things to become better people and show more love and empathy. And these are things that we're slowly, unfortunately, drilling out of them just through knowledge-based curriculums. We're so individualistic in this country, and we need to be more
populism has become. Look at Brexit. Look at the way that the country's going. It's a very divided country. Yeah. And populism, and the thing about populism is it's becoming very popular, right? And it's got to stop. We've got to stop thinking about self. We've got to start thinking about, we've got to start thinking about our society and the culture, because when the planet floods, the billionaires won't be saved. If it comes to it, the people will rise. If it comes to it, it's happened time immemorial through history that when the people have had enough, really had enough, then they rise up and say, we're not going up with this anymore. And times change.
The thing is though, sorry to interrupt, but there's going to be certain head teachers that and teachers and educators in general, but they're in a school and their absolute number one priority is their kids, which is absolutely fair enough. That's what you're in the job for. You're there to make a difference to your kids. But I think it will take people like yourself and I outside of education in some respects to make these changes, because we're looking at it as a whole. There'll be a lot of educators that will only be looking at their school and they'll be thinking, well, if I'm doing the best for my school, then that's all that matters. And in rightly so in some respects. But at the same time, if we're ever going to move education forward, we need to kind of come together and actually move education forward. And it's not acceptable if one school is outstanding and one is in special measures down the road from you,
No, and it's very much, it goes back to that argument of the changes in the system. Teachers put their kids first. Of course they do. They've worked over and above, and I'm so glad I've not been ahead this year. I really am. Because they're remarkable human beings to have coordinated and managed this sort of situation, and yet they still keep getting dumped on, right? But if you turn around to a head teacher and said, SATs are out the window. They've gone primary. Internal testing, take it out the window. It's gone. Ofsted is now going to become supported. League tables are scrapped. The national curriculum is going to get dramatically slimmed down and become much more poor child orientated and much more child centered. We're going to make the DFE a lot more, apolitical. You're going to get funding for 10 years so you can plan what you can do within your school for the next 10 years. You do that and you'll see so many head teachers try and change. They stay the same because the system works for them at this moment in time. And that's what they do. They play the system to keep themselves safe because they don't want to risk the changing to perhaps become even better. The thing that I've noticed when in my experience when I've been dealing with schools that have been in measures and difficulty, that it's in some regards it's easier to change when you're dealing with a school that's in difficulty, because you can't keep doing what you've already been doing, can you? You've got to change. You've got to do things differently. But you can either dump on them with a hell of a load of new schemes of work and say, follow that, do as you're told, that's it, bang, 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 autonomy. Or you do the harder thing, which is empower them, trust them, let them have a go, make mistakes, do things differently, and so that they can look at the needs of their kids and so that they grow exponentially. And that is how you get a school from inadequate to good in 15 months, not 18, 15. If you build schemes of working and you just follow the rules and follow everybody else, it'll take you 3 years. And that's what we need to empower people more to do. It's more difficult, it's a bigger risk, but the rewards are much, much quicker. And schools are then good and teachers are freed up and they're happy. Kids want to come to school because they think, what's going to happen today?
Yeah.
I had schools with alien landings on the roof with aliens hanging over the roof with police all over but actually we got the old police cars in the car park. All hell was breaking loose. People ringing up the school going, what the hell's going on? And we think we've got an alien land on the roof. Oh, all right, Bill, thanks for it. Yeah, it's one of yours. Yes, don't worry about it. Yeah. Because we were always doing things like that to inspire the kids and make them excited. So kids are coming to school, oh my God, police are there, that there's an alien craft. We built an alien craft that was about 15 foot tall, and we had an alien that was hanging over the roof with slime running down the wall.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, every time I ask my nephew and nieces, like, what did you do at school? Or like, what was good about your day at school? Nothing. It was boring. Do you know what I mean? And it's quite a common thing. I mean, why shouldn't school be exciting? And why shouldn't kids look forward to what they might learn in the next day? And then that's, I think, obviously, that's because of the way the curriculum is, rightly so, like you said, it's because the curriculum is so thick in terms of the way that you've got to teach them. But it stops teachers being creative and innovative in the way that they can adapt the curriculum to get the best out of their kids, because it's all data, isn't it? You've got to follow the data. I mean, a lot of the teachers' time in some respects is just inputting data into a system, and you take them away from actually doing the job that they came in to do. And that's why the teacher retention problem is such a big problem.
Children are a product. That's it. End of. Period. Children are data. That's it. Because the politicians want it that way.
Yeah.
And Ofsted, to give them their due, are moving more towards, it's not all about data. It's about how are you getting there? What curriculum are you giving to your children to get to that result? And that is a better story to be talking. That's a more important story to be talking. But when you're dealing with a 205-page document, what are people going to do? Everybody's going to do the same thing. Forgive me, but the Great Fire of London has had its day.
Yeah.
Much as it was a big historical fact, so was Grenfell. Right? And that could be relatable a lot more to kids nowadays than something that happened 400 years ago.
Absolutely.
We need to be adaptable and have the confidence to adapt to the needs of our children. But that will only happen when you've got permission from above, because people are so afraid.
Does that need to come from the exam boards in some respects? Because like OCR, AQA, they're the ones that design the curriculum in some respects, aren't they? So does that need to be coming from them and saying, look, we need to move away from the way that we've done things and we need to make this more practical?
It needs to come from the DFE to say that we're not going to follow this route all the time. We're not going to follow one particular exam system. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, TJ, and that's why they do it, because everybody's happy and everybody's making money up at the top. Why do you think that they're so insistent in this blinkered country in the middle of a world pandemic that we can't get rid of, that they're going to go back and do their exams. Who's going back next Monday? Year 11, year 13, who's going back? It's all about exams. And they haven't the vision to be able to say, here's a viable alternative. We should be, kids should graduate school. I hate to use America as a good example, but you graduate school. That's it. You passed high school. You graduated high school, or you didn't. You graduated 9th grade, right? That's the way that it is. But it's not the be all and end all and everything to where it's going to take you. A kid might, be leaving school with the standards of somebody who's in year 9, but my God, they go home and they can strip a motorbike engine to pieces. And they will do that. They will follow that. They will follow what they're good at. So they get better. Or they come home and they can program things that you wouldn't believe. Yeah. Or they can make, TikToks that are now world famous, and they make it. I don't know. It's all, it's all the future to me. And that, we're trying to teach children for jobs that don't exist.
Absolutely, yeah.
But where are the gaps in the market for kids to be employed? And it's these sectors. Why? Because we don't do anything to encourage them or teach them about it. Yeah. I'm no expert on the secondary curriculums and things like that, but I see teachers. When I tried to get that motorbike into my son's school, the engineering teacher just came out shaking her head and just said, "Can't believe it, can't believe it." We thought it was brilliant. That's all we wanted to do, was get on a motorbike, strip it down, rebuild it, put it back together, get it working. We thought, what a fantastic project for all the kids. But those up above our health and safety can't bring it in. We've nowhere to store it. It's just like, how is a motorbike dangerous? But what? You've got the tools to fix it. Do you know what I mean? It's a systemic problem. Yeah. And we need to have better people. We need to have some better people in it. And we need to get rid of with respect, we need to get rid of those people who are, bean counters, who do nothing for kids, who just thrash their staff and morale so that they become, bean counters themselves. And it's not good enough. It isn't good enough. And it's going to take, it's going to take a movement of people, educate parents about that there is a better way of doing things, and focusing on the mental health and the well-being of kids as well. Yeah. Because there's too many kids that are falling away out of this system now, and it's not on. It's not on. Yeah, I mean, the well-being of students is quite important. Obviously, we touched base on mental health just a little bit earlier, but I mean, you look at places like Finland who actually do surveys for their children of their well-being, and it's about creating a happy economy, isn't it? I mean, there's one thing being successful in your career, but what's the point if you're always going to go through depression? And that is a big thing in the UK. People aren't happy within themselves, and it's for some people, school works perfectly, like yourself. I mean, it worked perfectly for you, but for a lot of kids, it doesn't work for them, and they go through school life thinking that they're not good enough and they're not going to make it in the real world, and that is because of the way that education works at the moment. Well, that's the way that I always looked at it, because when I went to secondary school, it was A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, C3. So there were 7 sets, right? And so I always thought, well, school works for. I was lucky because I was relatively academically bright in terms of schooling. I was in A1, A2. So it worked for me, right? Now, my brother was in B2, and there was C1, C2, C3. All those kids underneath, it didn't work for them. It worked for those two, because that's what it was about, a knowledge-based curriculum. Remember it, study it, revise it, pass the test. It worked for them. For those groups underneath, absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. Now, I've met a mate who was in B2, C1, who is now he has a master's degree in chemical chemistry or something, daft like that. But school failed him at the time, and we put a massive pressure on kids that at 16, you've got to do this. At 18, you've got to do this. Then you go into university. It's a load of rubbish. It has to stop. We have to stop pressurizing children to get the first from Oxford. It's nonsense. Yeah. It's absolute rubbish. And parents have to change their attitude towards it, because it's not right. It's not good. Kids will find their way when they are ready. I didn't go to teacher training college until I was 22. And those 4 or 5 years that I spent college out in the real world, working in the factories, working in the pubs, working, here and there, putting the 100-hour weeks in, have made me such a better teacher, because I get that perception beyond the school gate, and I understand where my community are, right? I work in inner cities, hardcore schools, but they're just good, honest, working class folk who want you to do their best, who want to know that their kids are safe and that they're happy. They don't give a stuff about onomatopoeia or, expanded noun phrases. And if I told the parents, if the parents knew that is what they would learn, they would look at me and go, "What the hell are you doing? That's nonsense." We're forced into it by the government. And they go, "What the hell are they doing to our kids?"
Yeah.
It's a nonsense. They're 7 years old. They're kids. They should be having fun. They should be enjoying coming to school. They should be getting their hands dirty. They should be climbing trees. They should be making mud pies. They should be being kids.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to change. We need to get that word out to all parents groups to say, have you read this? This is what your kids are forced to learn in reception in year one. Give them a synopsis on a one sheet, and they'd look at it and go, "That's the national curriculum." And then you get uproar because parents go, "You ain't teaching my son that rubbish. That's a waste of bloody time. He's fine."
Yeah.
And once parents become more aware of this stuff that teachers are trapped in, then you get movement. Then you get people coming to the door, and saying this isn't good enough. And these decisions have been made and put together by people who are not educationalists. So we need to take control back from the DFE and be taken out of the political spectrum so that we can educate our children in what is right for them.
Absolutely.
So that each child individually can flourish. If you're a great, physicist, for want of a better word, why aren't you using Zoom to be working with or patching into the greatest professors of physics who are delivering lectures online, and then they can just join in with them? When you're 13 years old, you're telling me you can't sit there with your laptop and headphones on in school and just watch a lecture. Meanwhile, your mate next to you is watching Jeremy Clarkson take a car apart. Yeah. I don't know, but a program that is tailored to the individual needs and interests of a child. Yes, absolutely. Basic national curriculum, reading, writing, maths, basic sciences. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to understand how the world works and comes together and all that sort of thing. But then a curriculum that then is led by the child, not by a politician and school to say you've got to get these results because of progress 8. It's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
It worked for me. It worked for me, but it didn't work for my brother. It certainly hasn't worked for my kids. Certainly didn't work for my kids.
There's a lot of kids that it won't work for, and I think you're absolutely banging the money. That's where the issue lies is the curriculum in a lot of respects. And you're right, it needs to come from above. I mean, there's a lot that needs to change, and you look at like the big FTSE 500 companies. I mean, innovation is their absolute number one thing. I mean, they have areas where they've got pool tables, got cafeterias, all in the same office, and that's because they understand that people need to have a break. They need to like have time to reflect and be innovative. And you're not going to do that by just sitting at a desk and literally just going at it for hours, I mean, and that is what our education system is. It's you're in for 8:30, you're leaving at 3:30, 4 o'clock, some schools 5 o'clock, and you're literally, that's all you're doing is just lesson after lesson after lesson. You have a 1 hour lunch, maybe 15 minutes, 45 minutes, and you have like a 15-minute break in between somewhere. I mean, you are taught just to do a 9-to-5 job for the rest of your life, but that world doesn't exist anymore. I mean, if you want to give these children a bright future, I mean, they've got to have time to reflect, be innovative, find their passion, and then have time to actually explore that passion.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, particularly at secondary, look at the neuroscience, look at the way that teenagers are and the way that they develop. They're useless in the morning. We all know it. Every parent of a teenager in the world will tell you that they're useless in the morning. I would advocate that the secondary school doesn't start till 11. They don't even have to turn up to secondary school until 11 if they need to turn up on that day at all, because they could get up at 8:30, 9 o'clock and be doing some online stuff and picking up on lessons from previous days and stuff like that. They may have to go in on a much more flexible basis, and this pandemic has shown that the kids can do it. You know, go in for a couple of hard 2 or 3 proper full-on lectures, and then, right, I don't need to see you lot for the next 2-3 days because everything's online for you. So go away, research, and start cracking on it. I'm watching you from online to make sure that you're keeping on top of it all. Why not? Why not? Why can't this be facilitated nowadays? You know, and I look forward to the school that comes out of this pandemic and just says, actually, working at home and online has worked really, really well for us. You know, the parents have adapted to it. They're happy with it now, and the kids are a lot happier. What about the kid who hates going to school, but actually they're flourishing at home? You know, what about the kids who are collaborating online because they've got to get a project done online? Welcome to the real world.
Yeah.
They're using Teams and Sway and all these applications through Office that they are going to have to use when they grow up, right? Who needs a bloody 1.5 hour commute into the centre of a ruddy city and an hour and a half home at the end of the day? Yes, occasionally we're human beings. You've got to come together. We've got to work in close proximity to each other, and we've all missed that this year. But in the majority of the time, the world has adapted, and there will be more and more people now who are going to work from home than ever go back to an office. They'll pop in once or twice a week, but they will go, stuff the commute. I ain't doing it. I can get 6 hours of good quality work time back. Thanks very much. I'm not doing it. I'm going to work from home. I've got my little office. I'm happy. Thanks very much. You'll see a building explosion down at the bottom of people's gardens where the people will be setting up home offices. That's the real world. People work on documents together online, don't they?
Yeah.
What are we doing to help our kids learn that? Why can't we develop it, in a first world country, develop that kind of curriculum and enjoyment for our kids? That's all I want to see.
That's what I want to see. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've got to, you and I, maybe we're coming up the hill. And when we get to the top of the hill, we can make that snowball. And maybe we can just push that snowball over the edge. Yeah. Because once that snowball starts to roll down the hill, it's just going to become an unstoppable force. And by
it is the bigger picture. It is the absolute bigger picture. I mean, the way that we're doing things, I mean, every school is looking at it on a micro level, and I completely understand. But as a complete macro level, if we're going to actually look at trying to change the way that this education system runs in our economy, if we are going to compete globally around the world in terms of innovation, in terms of creating companies that are going to be in the FTSE 500, or they're going to be leading companies in the world for whatever industry, if we're going to produce those kinds of companies, we need to get it right from education, because that is ultimately the stem of every other industry, isn't it? That's where it stems from.
Go back 120 years before there was any formal schooling or anything like that. This was the country that was the innovative centre of the world. We founded the Industrial Revolution, the engineering, the mathematics, everything that came that developed the world. Yes, we went around the world raping, plundering, and nicking everything from everybody. And empire is an interesting topic. Isn't it interesting how empire is not in the national curriculum? How fascinating. How fascinating. But, go back to that time, when we were innovators, we were inventors, we were innovators, we were creators. Look at what we could do in the world at that time. We don't allow it now. We just don't allow it. And I think all that you and I are arguing for is, yes, it's a modern world. Yes, there's accountability. Yes, there's Ofsted. Yes, there's political will and sway and all that sort of thing. But we're saying, look, instead of the pendulum has gone from, that side where there was absolutely nothing coming into that way. And we're saying, no, you just need to bring it back. And you just need to listen to educators, listen to industry, listen to, companies who are saying, these are the people that we want, and this is what we need from them. Can you imagine a kid who's great with IT, at the age of 11 years old, going to the Google school? And they've got to cover that basic national curriculum of maths, English, and a bit of science and all that sort of thing. But the rest of the time, they're working on things for Google and they're developing their skills that way. They're going to have an employee who walks out of school absolutely ready to join the world of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why isn't it happening? This is what the free schools program is all about. Where are these people? It can be done. And I've seen great examples of it, and they do it in spite of the system, not because of it. And that's what's wrong. We need more people. We need the system there so it happens everywhere, rather than because of mavericks and because of people who are really, really different, and you'll meet the mavericks, you'll meet the people who are really, really different, and you'll meet the bean counters as well. And you'll find that they're very blinkered in their thinking because they can't do it. I have people on LinkedIn who troll me, who make life very interesting for me at times. And I refuse to block them because I think to myself, I am everything that you want to be, but you just cannot do it. So I love to torture them because they want to, I am everything that they want to be, but they just can't do it. So it's like suffer. It's quite funny at times. But yeah, we need to do it. I mean, for the sake of our children.
Absolutely. I mean, just before we leave it, I mean, just to kind of reiterate, I think there's certain head teachers that probably won't agree with you, but I don't think it's necessarily because they don't want the best for their children. I mean, I just think that they're just set in their way of that's the way it works. That's the way they went through education. But let's look at the hard facts. I mean, what are these children gaining? Like, are we preparing them for the real world after school? And for 85% plus, the answer is no, isn't it? I mean, there's some that the system works for, but there's a lot of children it doesn't work for. And we need to change.
I think something that gets missed out of this loop quite a lot is the voice of the child.
Yeah.
And I think that, we should have a much, much more accountable voice to the children, particularly as they're older, right?
Yeah.
Particularly in a secondary environment. And if you listen to the kids, I always find if I ever go to visit a school, I go and sit with the kids. I don't sit with the staff. I sit with the kids, because they'll tell you. Kids will tell you, and my kids have always said to me, "Oh, school's boring, Dad," and when pandemics hit and things like that, not one of them say I miss learning. None of them say I miss what I learned. They miss their friends. They miss the socialization, but they don't. No child in this pandemic has said I miss the learning. Isn't that sad?
Yeah.
Isn't that sad? So we need to listen to the children more because they're bored, and at the end of the day, they're kids. They don't know any better. They're just following the rules and coming through the system and trying to keep out of trouble. Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
Isn't that wrong? We all love the rebel. My favorite kids in education were always the ones with a bit of spunk and a bit of fight about them. Those were the ones that always gave me the greatest pleasure because I had to work bloody hard with them. But when you get them through it, they're the ones who come back 5 years later and give you a big hug and say, "Thanks, sir. Thank you for everything you did for me." And I go, "That's why I do it." Yeah. And you are now on the path, and those are the ones that make you think, "That's why I became a teacher." Sod your GCSEs, I don't care about that. You're now on the right path and you're going the right way. And that's why I became a teacher.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that often. And most of the time, if I see a kid coming, I've got to think, "Oh God, are they going to hit me?" but that's why you do it. When you can change that child's life, the one that's climbing up the walls and spitting and running and really, really struggling. And then a few years later, you can send them out the door and they're happy and they like coming to school and they like learning and they're doing really, really well. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's the job of the teacher. As a secondary teacher, it's about engaging children's things that they're really good at and giving them the opportunity to develop it and find a love of it and find a real enjoyment of it so that they can take it on to that next stage so that they're ready as they get through college. Then we've got kids who are absolutely up to speed with the modern world and how it sort of moves forward, and and that's what we need to do. It's really what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you look at the big companies and they when they're kind of targeting their customer base, they do research, don't they? I mean, you look at Tesco, for example, with loyalty cards, you scan your club card and then they'll send you vouchers based on what you buy, and it's very tailored to individuals. So why are we not doing that in education? I mean, I know Tesco's a very big, it's an extreme example, but we need to be listening to the kids and we need to be listening to the teachers to make sure we are making the right changes and having the right impact that we want to achieve, and right now there's a big disruption in communication between obviously the politicians and obviously the educators and the politicians just need to listen. I mean, and that's the thing, and that's where it's all going wrong.
I think we're in bizarre times.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a case of hanging in there until we get through this. Yeah. Because you're not going to get any radical change in this because they're just going to, the sad thing is they say that, why can't they just say that we need schools open so people can go to work? Why can't you just say that? Just be honest. It's about childcare. It's not about kids. It's about childcare. Is this? And that's what I find very frustrating because I think in extraordinary times like they are, I think that the more honesty that you give, the better people will respect you for it. The more you try and blag it, the more angry people get. And that's why we're an island. This is what I find amazing. We've got 70,000 dead. We're an island. You would have thought that on an island we would have been able to protect ourselves better from this pandemic than everybody else across Europe and in countries that have got connected and borders and all that sort of thing. It's funny, isn't it? The EU can shut borders when it wants to and stop people moving about. We're on an island and we've got more dead than anybody else. So I think there are questions you sort of think, things need to be better. We need to do things better. And at this time, I think we've just got to survive it and get through it, regardless of who's in charge at the DFE. But once we're through this, the unions, the chartered college need to get their act together, come together and just say no more until we start to have a reasonable professional discussion about what we're doing to our children here, because it's not the exam, the exam factory has to end. It's just not good enough. And it is not, what employer is going to trust these results this year? They don't look at them anyway. They're not bothered anyway.
I never looked at somebody's GCSEs ever. I mean, when somebody's come to apply for a job, or I've looked at I've had interviews with people before, I've never ever looked at their GCSEs. I've looked at the gem in the rough in some respects to see if I can find some potential. And that's not looking at their GCSEs.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same when I've been looking to employ a teacher. I don't care about the qualifications. They wouldn't be applying for the job if they weren't a qualified teacher. So I couldn't give a stuff about that. I'm looking to read that last paragraph on that personal statement. Who are you as a human being? What do you do? And I never got involved with the formal HR process of interviewing, because I thought it's a HR process. It tells me nothing. It told me nothing about an employee, a prospective employee. I'd let my deputy do it or something, because it was just purely a HR process. What they did do was come and have a chat with me for half an hour. And we talked football, rugby, motorbikes, whatever they were interested in, because I wanted to know who they were as a human being.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what mattered. That's what's more important. You're a qualified teacher. I expect you're applying for this post because you're a qualified teacher. Yeah, fine. I couldn't give a stuff if you got a first from Cambridge. It means nothing to me. Who are you? If all you've done for the last 5 years in training is study to be a student, give me the, if a person gets a first, but all they've done is study for 5 years, or give me a person who's got a 2-2, who's been captain of this, who's done this cover, who's got 4 blues, who's got, been in the union, done this, done that. Who am I going to employ?
Yeah, absolutely.
Qualifications are, it's who's the persona, who's the person who can solve problems, who's the go-getter, who's the one who wants to be different, who's the one who, really hates schemes of work and delivering them blindly, who's the one that's going to be different, who's the one that wants to change education. Those are the ones that I want to employ, because they're the ones who are going to inspire kids.
Absolutely. Amazing. Phil, look, we'll leave it there. I mean, we've gone through so much, and obviously it's a pleasure. I'd like to have you again. I mean, obviously to come back on season 2. I mean, I enjoyed speaking to you the first time, and you didn't disappoint again. So yeah, I'm really pleased. Obviously you came on, and we were on this journey together in some respects. I know obviously we're on different paths, but I mean, I've really enjoyed kind of getting to know you since our last podcast, and obviously the journey you're on. So yeah, obviously, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where we can take it, and fingers crossed we can make the difference that we hope to achieve.
Yeah, you're doing something good here, mate. Keep going with it. Get those right people on. Create the ripple. Create that ripple effect, and start getting people to challenge, and start getting people to look at things differently. Team up with people, spread the word, because you're doing a good thing here, and it will make a difference, and that's what's important.
Thank you. I mean, it's been a pleasure, and like this season 2 it's literally about where education is and why it needs to evolve. I mean, like there's stories about people that have left education or have gone to different countries because of the way that the system's run here in the UK and the differences over there. And I mean, it's quite remarkable to see how where we are and why we do need to change. And it's only because of the conversations I've had with these certain people, and like people like yourself, that I've actually understood. I mean, 7 weeks ago, I would not have known like what I know now, and this is where we need to change it in the public's eye. This is what we need to change.
Well, I can only chip in and say one thing about this. I've had about 20 friends who have gone abroad, and not one has come back.
Yeah.
There you go. They refuse to come back. They will just not come back to England. They'll jump around the world, but they will not come back here.
Yeah.
And what does it say? It's interesting. It's an interesting It's an interesting world, and we need to make ours better.
Absolutely.
For the sake of our kids.
Our kids and our teachers' well-being. I mean, I think education as a whole is great at what it used to do, and I think there's elements of it still being great and world class, but there is obviously not a lot that we need to change. And I mean, this is what this podcast is about. Hopefully, we can ask the right questions and get the right feedback and start like sort of creating these ripples, like you said. So yeah, again, Phil, thanks for coming on, and guys, thank you for watching.
Not at all. Pleasure, man. Take care.